over this journey, like what tricks of the trade have you learned that you think have made you successful?
The chance to learn by osmosis from being around some great teams, some great leaders. So I vividly remember my first day in product marketing at Arbor Software. It was a couple decades ago, but I sat down and my boss said, the first rule of marketing is to know your audience. And I told the whole team, hey, if you guys build the right product for our users, if you make sure that they get value, marketing will earn our paycheck. We'll put a good message around it. The best thing you can do to help marketing is build an awesome product that solves highly valuable problems in a differentiated way for users.
Would you define as something that's a great marketing campaign? What are the attributes? What makes a good marketing campaign?
Like one of the places where I sometimes feel almost ashamed as a marketer is like Super Bowl commercials, because you see so much emphasis on memorability, so that people will go, did you see the squirrels eating chips in the swimming pool? And like everybody remembers that, and you go, was that for an insurance company or a car, or was that for beer?
These great campaigns are able to connect both emotionally as well as aspirationally with the users and the customers. That's amazing.
Very well said.
Empathy is key, and I think that being able to empathize with users, especially for us as founders and CEOs, that's something that we need to develop more consciously.
AI is coming to marketing in a big way. I mean, AI is coming everywhere in a big way, but it's coming to marketing in a big way. We sign up application developers for a service that they might pay, just pay as you go for a few dollars kind of thing. We'd go, hey, they filled out the form. Like, our work's done. Getting them to sign up doesn't really do much for us. If they just play around with it once and give us $3.
Hi everyone, I'm Deepinder Dhingra, founder and CEO of RevSure.ai. And today we're joined by Lance Walters, a highly distinguished marketing leader and an advisor to RevSure.ai as well. And we're very lucky to have him. Welcome, Lance, to the podcast.
Hey, Deep, great to be on RevTalk. Nice to see you.
Great to have you here, Lance. So Lance, we'll kick it off. You've had an amazing journey. You've worked across multiple categories, early stage, mid stage, late stage companies. I saw you've done, and that's what inspired me as we first met each other. You've done stuff in the BI space, in the CRM space, in the analytics, finance space, and now in the open source space. And you also did graph databases, and now in the open source space around AI computation. So would love to, understand more about your journey, what motivated yourself, and also a bit about your current role.
Great. Okay, cool. I might take that in reverse order. So I currently lead the marketing function for a startup out of San Francisco, California called Anyscale. We're a commercial open source company, so we make a lot of technology freely available in open source. We commercialize a certain number of users who use that. I appreciate what you mentioned about sort of my background, Deep. I've been very fortunate to work in some really exciting spaces, to work with some great teams, to work for some great leaders and the like. And now being at Anyscale, we're fortunate. I joined the company. We power ChatGPT. Like the training for ChatGPT was done on our software. We power Uber's ETA, your Spotify playlist, your Netflix home screen with all the recommendations, the rows, the ordering, the images even were powered by our software. So very fortunate to have world-class customers and a really, I will say, a very fast-moving, very competitive market opportunity. In terms of how I got here, I was educated as an engineer with a computer science minor, and I found myself in technical support at Oracle back in the days of on-prem software, helping large enterprise companies sort of troubleshoot enterprise database systems. And it turned out to be great grounding actually for a marketing career. What I figured out pretty quickly after that when I went to a startup was that a lot of what I was doing in my job was trying to understand technology and communicate with customers in a way that would help them succeed with it. And I was in a small company looking at product marketing going, hey, while I'm applying those skills to kind of 3 generations old of software and sort of known problems in on-prem bugs and the like, product marketing is doing that for the next generation of the software, what's about to come out. And they're demoing it on stage at the user conference and training sales and briefing press and analysts. And it just looked so cool. And I sort of applied and was lucky they actually created a lower level in product marketing so that they could let me in as a junior person. But from there, I got the chance to work with and for some amazing people, land in some great companies, and try to accrue a lot of experience that I could add value to companies going forward.
No, that's great. And I think what's interesting is that what you mentioned is your engineering background and then your ability to take and communicate, the products and the technology in a way that appeals to customers and to users. That was very valuable. And that's what I guess helped you kind of go across multiple categories in your career as well, right? So, and, whether that's the different database categories or the different BI analytics categories, etc. No, that's very interesting. And so what would you see like over this journey, like what tricks of the trade have you learned that you think have made you successful, right? Compared to others, as an example. Yeah.
I certainly a lot, I can share some insights, but a lot of it is just the chance to learn by osmosis from being around some great teams, some great leaders. So I vividly remember my first day in product marketing at Arbor Software. It was a couple decades ago, but I sat down and my boss Dan said, the first rule of marketing is to know your audience. And at the time, he took me through examples of like, you need to know that talking to a journalist is different than talking to a salesperson. That's different than talking to a prospect, who's different than talking to a customer. But the thing that I've come to understand much more deeply since then is like, okay, a CIO thinks very differently than an application developer. A CTO has her own set of concerns. The CFO is going to look at this transaction in a very special way. But really getting grounded in that notion that like there are that there might be multiple different people involved in your sale, and that they have very different care abouts, and your first job as a product marketer is to understand those things. So that was a big one, was kind of knowing your audience deeply. Another one that I was taught was to be an experimental marketer. And I think this one gets misunderstood by marketing. Like, technology evolves quickly. We marketers, like I used to market to finance, and they're like the latest late adopters. They never want the new stuff. Whereas marketers are always looking for competitive advantage. We tend to adopt technologies quite early and jump onto things. And that's cool. We have sort of an experiment-oriented mindset. But what I always tell CEOs is that experimentation means discipline. I mean, you think of scientists in a laboratory watching bubbling test tubes, they don't just sort of walk away and get lunch. They're paying attention to which experiments are succeeding and how do we double down on those? Which experiments are struggling and how do we tune them up so that they work better? And which experiments are failing so that we can quit wasting our time and money? And we end up doing that in marketing all the time. Where I get frustrated is when marketers think experimentation means just trying stuff without accountability. That's not what experimentation means. It means really doing what you owe the company, measuring the ROI all the time, and understanding what really works. And then the last one that I would mention is that I've absolutely learned through many jobs and many markets is that product really, really counts. It's not like I didn't know that before, but like I joined Anyscale about 6 months ago, and there were a few folks on the team who came to me sort of asking various flavors of like, okay, what sort of marketing special features do you need in the product so that we can tell somebody something to get in some magic quadrant somewhere? They sort of implied that like we were going to build the product to game the system or game the market. And I told the whole team, hey, if you guys build the right product for our users, if you make sure that they get value, marketing will earn our paycheck. We'll put a good message around it. We'll find a way, but don't reverse engineer a product to a message. Let us engineer a message to the right product. But the best thing you can do to help marketing is build an awesome product that solves highly valuable problems in a differentiated way for users. Solve that, you've made the whole marketing team's job a lot easier.
No, got it. I think you make a great point. Actually, great 2 points that I came out with here. Is one thing is that marketing cannot make up for a bad product. So we really have to make sure we have a good product, and then marketing builds on top of that and helps communicate that better and the value better. And the second thing is experimentation, right? Make sure you're diligent about experimentation, because, and I'm guilty of that as a founder. I'm data science and AI oriented, but I keep like asking our marketing team, right, to, hey, let's try this out, and let's, without kind of really making, figuring out, okay, how much effort it's going to take, and making sure that we're doing experimentation right. So those two are really, really valuable points. And that comes to, the next question. Like, I know that, you've been doing this for a while, and you've probably solved a lot of challenges, but what, in your most recent experience, what are the critical challenges you faced, and what helped you solve that, or what was the solution to those challenges? Because a lot of our listeners would really be interested in, like, in these times, post-pandemic, high uncertain macroeconomic environment, how do you kind of solve problems that you might face?
Yeah, I actually have I have a current problem that I haven't solved, but I can share it and talk a little bit about what I'm trying to do to solve it. So Anyscale, so this is back to kind of AI being an extremely fast moving category, even by classic kind of Silicon Valley tech standards. Everything moves fast. AI is moving breathtakingly fast. So Anyscale, when I joined, was a kind of a classic platform company with a set of capabilities that those companies I mentioned, Netflix, Uber, Pinterest, Spotify, kinds of folks could use to enable lots of different AI use cases. And the buyers, the people we would market to, the kind of trade shows we would go to, the programs we would run, were mostly aimed at kind of machine learning practitioners, people who get paid to manage AI infrastructure. Not necessarily the data scientists who would create the models and those sorts of things, but the people who get paid to make those models actually like hum in production. That's what we've historically sold. Well, it delivers a lot of value to the organizations I've mentioned, but it also means that you need a team and some skills to consume it. What we introduced a couple of months ago, given the evolution in the AI market and the fact that we power services like ChatGPT, was a large language model API, where now you could call an API. Any of you who have played with ChatGPT know what I'm talking about. You can send a prompt, you can get information back. So there's all kinds of interesting, if you want to, like, obvious example is add a chat bot to your operational application. So that's pretty cool. And it's great for marketing to have more products in the bag for sure, but suddenly this product is aimed at an entirely different market, right? The new endpoint service is aimed at application developers who don't know reinforcement learning, hyperparameter tuning, training. Like, I don't know that, and we don't want them to have to learn that. But they hang out in different places and they speak about these same problems in different language. And so it's very much a learning exercise. Like it's awesome to have another product and another audience to go after, but now you've got to get to know that audience quite quickly, learn from every experiment you run and go from there. So we're in the process of testing various kinds of campaigns, messages, imagery, all of that to understand what really works with that audience, how to sort of family these two things so that we get, that 1 + 1 = 3 effect that a lot of companies go for. That's what we're up to right now, but it's an interesting problem, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity to try to solve it.
No, that's interesting. I think what's interesting is that in an existing company, you're building a new offering which is towards a different segment of users, I guess, maybe not customers, but users within that customer. And that has its own challenges, because like, how do you kind of synchronize this message with other messages that they have heard from the same company? So that, I think that's definitely a challenge that, and especially when we start building more modules, is something that we need to keep in mind as well. And I'm talking from a RevSure perspective, but that's interesting. And that's doing this. Now, coming back to you talking about, you're testing different campaigns and different messages. What in the past, or what currently, would you define as something that's a great marketing campaign? What are the attributes? What makes a good marketing campaign? And that kind of helps you. One of the challenges that we are trying to solve is how do we make RevSure stand out from the rest, right? And kind of stand apart from the clutter. And so what does that, marketing campaign look like?
Yeah, I think there are lots of elements. I've worked with great demand gen leaders who I'm sure could give you a longer list than I can, but I think a lot of the essentials, certainly first one, I'll reinforce what I said, which is, understanding of the audience and what they care about is going to be a big one for a successful campaign. So closely related to that, right, is the value prop. It's the value prop in their language, right? It's not what you built your product to do for them. It's what they're worried about that your product can solve for them. And they'll sound like the same things. And in some markets, they are almost very mature markets. Those end up being the same thing. Early markets, those things can be radically different in terms of how your founding team might think about this enabling capability and how your average, sort of enterprise buyer, late adopter might think about that. So I think audience, value prop. I think, we're in a visual world. We're in a world of TikTok and video and those sorts of things. So I think visual impact of campaigns matters a lot. And I think all of that combines to go to memorability. Like one of the places where I sometimes feel almost ashamed as a marketer is like Super Bowl commercials, because you see so much emphasis on memorability so that people will go, did you see the squirrels eating chips in the swimming pool? And like everybody remembers that. And you go, was that for an insurance company or a car, or was that for beer? What was that? So I don't like people missing it. But I think those are the elements in really B2B or B2C. A lot of those things come together. Deep, I have a story from kind of the early days of the CRM market that I think paints a good example here. Can I share that?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear it.
All right, cool. So I was working in the CRM. I was in a small company that got acquired into Siebel Systems in about 2000. It was very heady days of the CRM space. Salesforce was in its early days, making a lot of noise, didn't have a lot of customers at the time, but certainly attracting a lot of attention because of Mark Benioff. And I saw two different companies come at the same market with such different approaches, and very smart approaches for both coming from where they were. And it makes me think a lot of, like the CRM market in 2000 was the AI market of today. It was the next big, who's going to get to own that? Is it going to be Siebel? Is it going to be SAP? Will Oracle show up? What's going to happen here? Well, Siebel came from, I thought Siebel did an amazing marketing campaign. Siebel was a very mature product. They sold high. We did $40 million deals. Like, these were huge deals. The CEOs are signing checks here. One of their ads was a Siebel customer stock chart index plotted against the NASDAQ and plotted against the New York Stock Exchange. And what they showed was that the aggregate Siebel customer index massively outperformed the market. Okay, so let's review that. Who's the audience? Okay, that's clearly aimed at the C-suite, right? That's not an app developer who's looking at stock charts, right? That's aimed at the C-suite. It's the ultimate value prop. You want your stock price to go up. It basically said, if you buy this software, your stock price will go up. And it was visual and visceral. People felt it. I mean, you're talking to executives who have checked stock quotes probably for 20 years. They see something going up, going, I want to buy that. That is Siebel, and that worked. Now, pause for a second, contrast that with Salesforce, going after the same market opportunity, nascent, not an army of, blue chip Fortune 500 references. They came at the market with that no software button, right? I remember I was at a trade show. I saw my friend Clarence So, he's one of the earliest Salesforce guys. I had worked with him in another company. Clarence, what's the button all about? And he kind of explained it. And I think even to this day, a lot of Silicon Valley underappreciates how much was in that button. People looked at it as kind of a cute, like, oh, they were promoting SaaS. They were saying we should stop using on-prem software. Like, yeah, that's true. But it was also about who's the audience. And it was also about what does our company exist to do? And it was also about what problem are we solving for you? What we're solving is software complexity. Like in my mind, there were almost 8 Super Bowl commercials worth of information and thought that could actually go into that little slash across the software, no software button from Salesforce. And I can't tell you how many interviews I've been in since then. Could be talking to somebody about being an advisor or maybe interviewing for a job where people are like, hey, what's the button that you would give us that would change the whole world and make us win the market? And it's like, it's not that simple just because Salesforce pulled it off.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's fascinating how these great campaigns are able to connect both emotionally as well as aspirationally with the users and the customers. That's amazing.
Very well said.
So, yeah. So in your personal experience, so have you run any successful campaigns that you think that you kind of managed to do both in terms of connecting emotionally, aspirationally, and having the right impact on customers and users?
Yeah. I think probably my best example, I'm still looking for my no software button campaign. But I would say one of the closest ones, my last employer, graph database company called Neo4j out of San Mateo and Sweden. We sort of got forced into a marketing motion by the pandemic. We were doing a lot of road shows and the like. We had local community members. They were awesome for bringing people together and kind of updating them on products and letting them share use cases. We had to pivot that to a digital event on like no notice, like a lot of people did. But we managed to stand up a recurring, we were doing it monthly, then we moved it to every 6 weeks, but we called it Neo4j Connections. It was about a half-day session. It was almost like what you think of as a breakfast seminar, but delivered digitally. But it was incredible sessions. It was all use case oriented. Like it was not us talking about how great our software was or our roadmap or those sort of things. It was all users talking about their amazing use cases. And I think the fact that, graph databases open up so many like a lot of infrastructure, it's kind of like clay that can be molded into lots of different interesting shapes. And so to hear people show off all the different shapes they've made to get prospects to go, oh, I would want to make some of those. It worked really well. I think, first of all, it was anchored in customers, which is, there's just nothing more powerful than a great customer talking about what she achieved, of course. I think it was at a time with the pandemic that community meant a lot. People felt like, hey, we're gathering on a regular basis to share knowledge with each other and understand what people are doing with open source software. That's the other thing is, we were a commercial business, but most of our usage was free, as is typical in open source. So we were really helping people understand how to take advantage of this. I don't know. I guess I would say that was one, like it was one of those, we ran it as an experiment and it just worked. We saw huge attendance numbers, very strong feedback from the audience, lots of views on the replays. And it was like, okay, let's crank the hand. Then you ended up in that perfect spot of like, how do we fine tune this? And we learned things like, we got to make the intro a little shorter. We got to have more female speakers. We got to have more demos. Like you just get to where you turn it from a B+ into an A-, eventually an A with a great team behind it. Worked really well.
No, that's interesting. And I think the important point that you made is that how do you get the campaign to be anchored on customers? And that's what really, helps other prospects understand the value of the product and the value of the offering. And that's amazing. That's amazing. So we'll switch gears a bit now, Lance. I'd really like to understand like what has shaped, what leaders, sales or marketing leaders have really inspired you and kind of shaped the way you do your craft. I'd love to learn and, we'd love to read about them as well after this. Yeah.
Of course, Steve. Yeah, as I said, I'm very proud of what I am as a reflection of a lot of the investment that other people have made in me. So, what one biggie, multi-time boss of mine, gentleman named Dave Kellogg. A lot of your listeners will know him. Check out kellblog.com. He blogs about 7 different ways to measure churn. He blogs about planning incentives for sales. He blogs about planning business dinners. I mean, the guy's wealth of knowledge on business issues, strategy issues, and marketing issues is pretty unbelievable. He's a very hot presenter at SaaStr and other places. So he's a big one. Tracy Eiler, longtime friend of mine. She's CMO at Open Sesame, but incredible marketing leader. She's one of those people who like makes marketing fun. And I don't mean in like the cheerleadery, we bought fun giveaways. I mean, like we're driving the business. We're aligning with our sales team. We're capturing customers and giving them value. Like really, you know, the kind of person who you go, I want to drive into work on Wednesday morning if I get a chance to work with Tracy. And then one more to mention, Emil Ephraim, who I got to see just a couple of days ago, but my CEO from Neo4j, you know, always like a CEO who ran the business, but always had deep empathy for his audience. Like he grew up as a developer. And so he could always really deeply relate to the developers. They were kind of always close to his heart. He would engage with marketing at the right level. I worked for CEOs who were like, marketing's your thing, go do it. Like I need more engagement to that. And I've worked for CEOs who were CMOs who are looking at page tags on the Contact Us page, probably getting a little too deep into it. And he was in the area where he would help with ideas, he would help with execution, he would be a great spokesperson, but not get too deep into the details. And it just worked great. So those are three leaders who I thought were really transformative to my ability to evolve and hopefully be an effective marketer.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. Empathy is key. And I think that, you know, being able to empathize with users, especially for us as founders and CEOs, that's something that we need to develop more consciously. Because we are great. A lot of us founders are from a product background, and we have to really, really work on the empathetic aspect of how users use our product and how they feel when they use the product, right? And that's a very important aspect. What do you think is the future of marketing? Like, if you put on your telescope and figure out, what's going to happen with marketing and what are the trends that are going to impact it? Like for the next 5 years, what are some of the shifts you see happening in how marketing works and how it kind of drives value for the business?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think one of the fun things about working in marketing is that the nature of the work changes. Marketing's different than it was 10 years ago. It will certainly be different 10 years from now. Looking 5 years ahead deep, I mean, so certainly one biggie, and it won't be surprising coming from somebody who works for an AI company, but that said, I'm certainly not the lone voice saying that AI is coming to marketing in a big way. I mean, AI is coming everywhere in a big way, but it's coming to marketing in a big way. The most obvious one that Gartner and others have talked about certainly is content generation. But that said, I think AI has a massive opportunity to assist us as marketers and answer tough questions like, okay, I got 300,000 people in this database. Which one should I be targeting? What should I hit them with? And by the way, now it gets interesting because we're used to a world where there's like a data sheet, right? Or a financial services case study. And now we may have the opportunity to do highly personalized content quickly, highly personalized ads quickly, a lot of things that now you start to get much more granular in how you execute some of that marketing. So I think AI will assist marketers in lots of places. So that's one. I think another one, the role of channels and communities is always changing. I think the world has woken up to the power of communities. A lot of that happened in open source. Community is incredibly important to what we do at any scale. That said, Salesforce, Microsoft, many others have shown that you don't need to be an open source company to develop a vigorous user community that can help drive value for each other, that can help grow your ecosystem, that can certainly help drive your business. But I think that like tapping into community to understand community, learn from community, figure out how to monetize or expand with community in a community-friendly way. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and you certainly see some community management tools popping up around that. And then I think the last one that I'd mention, and I especially think about it in early markets, right? People who are in startups where there's not 8 years of Gartner Magic Quadrants, there's not established buyer vocabulary, those kinds of things. And it's like you've got that dark funnel out there of who should be looking at us that isn't. I've lived that in prior lives where, like, I worked for an enterprise mobility company. And our category, according to a Gartner, would have been rapid mobile application development. I never talked to literally a single buyer who ever used that language. So it was like the space literally didn't have the search vocabulary for people to find us. And so we actually found that intent marketing was really important for us. Like we would try and find people who were looking at SAP's Fiori, which was a competing solution. And we found that if they were looking at that solution, they were probably in market for something like us. So I think that capability will evolve. And I think that the deep funnel and understanding, what impacts marketing can make, deeper in the process. That conversation's been happening, but I think that continues to evolve. We're feeling it at any scale. I mentioned the new product introduction where we sign up application developers for a service that they might pay, pay as you go for a few dollars kind of thing. In the sort of old world of marketing, we'd go, hey, they filled out the form. Like our work's done. We got them all the way there. We hit them with the right ad. We got the right message. They read the ebook. They filled out the form, and now we're good. And now it's like, hey, we're signing people up for a service. Getting them to sign up doesn't really do much for us. If they just play around with it once and give us $3, that that didn't even pay for the ad. So we want them to use. And so there's certainly the opportunity for marketing to go past the form fill, to continue to engage with those people and get them to get more value, hopefully consume more and pay more.
Got it. No. I think we are also hearing some of these trends. Definitely, I think AI, like you mentioned, we're right in the middle of that. But also, especially this whole concept that marketing has a role to play and a contribution to drive, into the deep funnel. So we are seeing a lot of leading organizations and marketing teams have like stage 2 pipeline targets. There's essentially, how do you connect what's happening in the dark funnel, if you will, with how it's kind of flowing through the deep funnel, right? So that connection between the dark and the deep funnel is getting more and more important. And obviously, the whole movement towards buyer empowerment and education, and how do you think about enabling buyers throughout the whole journey, and also beyond the first conversion to customer, because the whole customer success, the renewal and expansion motion is getting more and more important, for most companies. So yeah, definitely we are seeing that trend, and it's very exciting, what the future holds for us. So with that, Lance, thanks for making this session. It was an amazing and fascinating chat, and I'm sure viewers will find this very useful. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to chat again very soon. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, RevTalk audience, for listening. Thanks, Steve, for the chance.